Welcome to KRQE's New Mexico News Insiders. Here's Gabrielle Burkhart and Chris McKee. Sponsored by New Mexico PBS.
So Gabby, this doesn't happen all the time, but the idea for today's episode, you know where this comes from, courtesy of one of our listeners.
Yes, thank you, listener.
A couple months ago, a guy named Richie wrote on Spotify, and I want to read it here directly. He wrote, quote, "Are you going to do an episode on the Lobo football team? The turnaround from last year with Bronco coming in and the QB Dampier playing amazing." So I remember seeing this comment, Gabby, and I thought, he does have a really good point. After a lot of struggling seasons, I've been here in New Mexico for about 12 years. A lot of football seasons have been a struggle. But the Lobos did have an impressive season here under first-year head coach Bronco Mendenhall. But, Gabby, as soon as I saw this comment, really things started to roll in a different direction.
Yeah, this tends to happen within about a month of that idea. Thank you, Spotify listener, by the way. The Lobos lost their head football coach, Bronco Mendenhall, after just one season on the job. That was preceded by athletic director Eddie Nunez also leaving his top role. And on top of that, the Lobo men's basketball team is now facing its own issue in Division I college basketball with a lawsuit filed against an active team member and the head basketball coach, Richard Pitino.
So like a lot of things in news, you end up planning to cover something one way, and then along the way, there's developments in the story, and it changes the conversation. So let's bring in our two guests here today, the sports experts for KRQE News 13, that being sports director Van Tate, and also sports anchor reporter Jared Chester. Van and Jared, thank you both for being here.
Thanks you for having us.
Pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
Yep. Yeah, and also back again for the second time. You guys have both been on the podcast here before, so thanks for returning.
Just showing us love, man, right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Love it. In a topic that a lot of people are paying attention to over the last 4 months.
Yeah, and while this topic is about sports, we're a news podcast, tend to report like more of the news elements, but we're trying to open up this conversation on both sides of things. Like there's news happening, there's sports happening, there's exciting stuff for the Lobos. They're also a major source of pride, as we all know, entertainment, and truly part of the fabric here in New Mexico. So Van and Jared, based on what we just described, it seems like over the last few months, Lobo athletics as a whole have been a whirlwind. Without drilling into the details, because we'll kind of take it step by step, this seems like a lot of change and challenges in the school's most watched athletic program. So what are your thoughts broadly on how have the last few months been for Lobo athletics?
Well, it's just one of those things that happens sometime. You can start with the first domino being Eddie Nunez. And Bronco Mendenhall, the head football coach, going back to Utah, kind of like going home for him, even though it was a short stay and it was maybe not done as I would do it. But it's his life. And you start with that. And the new AD coming in, you don't know if maybe Bronco as a football coach, maybe he didn't like to move, or you just don't know any of the stuff. And maybe, I don't know if that factored in also to making it easier for him to go. I don't know that, but you just don't know what's happening. And then the last thing you talked about with the basketball player, that is very different situation. Playing on multiple teams, you have fights all the time, and I just don't know how it got to where it got.
Mm-hmm. And you've covered Lobo athletics for a long time.
The last 31 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has it struck you, Jared, as well as just kind of this is an unusual time, seeing all the things happening at once?
Yeah, and what I try to tell people, too, is that it's not just here. It's all across the country with the landscape of college athletics really changing. I mean, there's a lot of movement, and New Mexico is no different. Obviously, with the new Eddie leaving, kind of hurt because he was kind of a rock. He did a really good job, but I mean, we knew he was going to leave. Yeah. It was a matter of time. He did his job, did a great job, and I think people were a little shocked when Fernando came in and how young he is, because he's one of the younger guys.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's doing good so far. He had obviously a very rough beginning with what he had to deal with right away, but yeah, it's just I think that's just how it's going to be moving forward, and yeah, a lot more movement and shake up, and yeah.
let's start with football. We talked a little bit of details, but to get a little bit more into them, the most recent development that happened across a couple weeks of December, essentially. At the beginning of the month, Bronco Mendenhall, he was the head football coach for the team. Based on what our listener Rich A again said, a lot of people, I think, saw the team turn it around this season, and it generated a lot of new excitement. They finished with a 5-7 record.
Right.
Nearly made a bowl game for the first time in almost a decade. Van and Jared, just to ask you about the season itself, how impressive was this season for a team that's really faced a lot of losing seasons over the last decade? How impressive was it just to see them turn it around with a first-year new head coach?
Well, it was impressive because the team had a lot more fight than they normally would have. And I think what made it real exciting for fans is offense. You know, you see an explosive offense. These guys could score on anybody. And, you know, like even though the defense was almost the opposite of the offense, and they could score with anybody. And that's what has happened a lot of places where they wanted exciting head coach who has a real good offensive system. You know, Coach Beck was real good as far as being an OC and making that offense just hum the whole season. And I think people got excited because they weren't such pushovers. You can't come in here and just expect to win. These guys could come back. They could be down by 3 touchdowns. They come back. You know, you don't know because the offense was so explosive. And I think that generated a lot of excitement. People have been wanting to win here for a long time. And they just had the team seemed to believe in itself. I'm sure Jared would agree with that. The team believed in itself. They just had fight in them. And you got sick of it. It got to be disgusting after a while. You know, like when the guys are out there and it's like, man, just don't let them do that to you. You know,
Yeah.
Right, in the past season.
Yeah.
This is what you're referring to, yeah.
Yeah, and also I think it just with them having an 0-4 start too, and people were like, "Oh, here we go again."
Yeah.
But as Van said, this team never gave up, and I mean they came back, and you saw electric play from Devin Dampier, who was crucial in their success, and then also local guys like Nick Trujillo and of course Luke Weissong, who people really just latched to. It's great to see. You know, New Mexicans love to see their fellow New Mexicans do well on the gridiron, and I think it was just a perfect storm of that, and just missing out on that bowl game that really hurt.
Yeah.
But then of course that win against Washington State, that was huge. That was fans rushed the field. So yeah, it was a very good year for Lobo football.
What was the perspective like of the stands during, this time when we're kind of seeing the shift and seeing the excitement on the field? What was it like from your perspective?
Just, we have people just call us, not even to tell us anything about stories, just to talk sports.
Just to talk.
People were a lot more excited. And, the fans were, the stands, I should say, were a little bit more filled. Nothing like it used to be. But it was definitely a little bit better, and I think there was electric and excitement within the fan base for sure.
And you don't have the same kind of fan commitment that you had when like Rocky Long was here. You had a good crowd, and it was rare to see it where it was just empty like it is. And I think another thing that not to put this on the fans, but everybody has to take their part in all of this. And when Washington State came here with all of that on the line, like, hey, like you can keep your bowl hopes alive, you would have liked to have seen a bigger commitment. The fans that were there, they were into it. And they, like Jared just said, they stormed the field. But, with so much on the line, you're either in or you out. You're going to be a fan or no. Because you look at some of these small high school stadiums and stuff like that. I'm thinking about Artesia in particular, where the fan support is great. How many championships now, Jared?
Yeah.
31, right?
Yeah.
And
it helped. It makes a difference.
It's like a family. Everybody needs to do their part. And the fans, I understand. I don't want to make it sound like the product has been great because it hasn't. So I understand the fans' grievances. But hey man, you guys got to show up. Everybody's got to take this step forward together.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And as we mentioned, by the end of the year, though, the rumors hit that Bronco Mendenhall might be on the short list for another coaching job. It ended up being true. He was plucked by the Utah State Aggies. His departure comes just a year into his 5-year deal and means he faces a $2 million buyout. Van, this isn't really uncommon, though, when you look back on Lobo football history. What can you tell us about what's behind this? Is he just that good, or was there something else behind his departure?
Well, I don't know if this thing has been in the works for a long time. I've heard all kind of different things, and if I don't know it's a fact, I don't want to say. But I will hint that somebody was telling me that this was in the works well before it actually went down. And I remember at that last press conference specifically asking him about the story out of the Deseret News and saying, "Hey, are you entertaining those thoughts at all?" And he gave us this answer that was so different that I was just like, uh-oh. You know?
Yeah.
So you know, you can't begrudge a guy for going home, but it's the way you do it. Maybe I'll catch you guys on the next time around because I just got here. You know, and that's just my own opinion. You know, like I don't think I could leave somebody hanging like that after 1 year, especially if I said all these nice things at the opening press conference. And I'm just now here's my chance to show that I mean some of those things. And I'm like, oh, see you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One of these questions I want to ask you, Jared, you know, because you brought up NIL in the very beginning here. We continue to hear about it more and more in athletics these days. NIL, for those who don't know, that's name, image, and likeness. It comes essentially from a 2021 U.S. Supreme Court decision. It changed the landscape for the NCAA, right? Which for years, the NCAA wouldn't allow college athletes to be compensated for their name, image, and likeness. So you'd see all these video games come out without the names of the players. But, you know, part of some of the arguments for years had been like, you're getting the player or whatever the product is as close to that player as you can. But, and the university or the licensed entity is keeping all of the funds. The athletes are getting nothing. So this goes to court. Supreme Court essentially sides with athletes. It now ensures that players can make money on their own name, image, and likeness. And so you basically got these amateur athletes that are kind of moving into like a pro athlete type realm. They're allowed to sign endorsement deals to make money.
Yeah. And clearly this is having an impact that we're seeing unfold across the country among athletes, that along with the so-called transfer portal, which allows players to switch colleges in the off season. But to ask you guys, how much are the NIL and this transfer portal playing into what coaches are doing, the dynamics of how they handle a team, you think? Like, do you think it factored into Broncos' decision?
I don't think it really factored into his. I think it definitely was something that was talked about because when he left coaching and came back, it's totally new. I mean, the landscape, like I said, is totally different in college football, and that is definitely something that coaches need to know how to handle and have a good relationship with the collectives that are within each of these states now and with all of these teams. I will say...
and the collectives, real quick, these are the groups raising the money that then gets distributed to the players, right?
Correct. Yes, there are collectives, multiple all across the country. And actually, I guess our collective is one of the best when it comes to college basketball. But for football, it's still growing. And, but with him, too, and with Bronco, I heard that again, we don't have all the facts, but I heard that there's, a lot of money coming with him too when it comes to the collective side and the NIL. And is that something that maybe drew him? I don't know. Could it be something that sweetened the pot? Possibly. It's definitely something that has changed the NCAA and has changed college athletics in general, football especially. And personally, I'm not a big fan, but that's just me.
It's changed the landscape. Yeah.
It's got to change the dynamic of the team also, right? When you have players who are making a ton of money and players who aren't.
And we talked me and Jared actually had a conversation about this and like saying like, hey, man, what if you were a coach? How would you do this? And I said, I think, and I'm not a coach. I haven't been, I've never been coaching on a college level. I just coached my son, But I'm just saying, with this situation, the way it is, we've gotten away from so many things that's just regular character of a person. And so I said I would try this. I would try to get either two different things. You have a pay scale so the players will know what's available to them before they even get here. Quarterbacks make this much. These guys, the offensive linemen make this much. And then that way you don't have any division and stuff like that once you get things going, or everybody makes the same. we're a team. Everybody's going to get a piece of this pie. We're all making this. The guy who's still working on his game to try to play one day, he makes the same as the star quarterback. Because now you're teaching something different that's higher than football. You're teaching everybody to be on the same level and to do. We're working for a common goal. It's winning, and so that's the priority we have here. We're a team. We're trying to win, and it's not about the money. The money is just something that comes a little bit extra. And I was saying that if they did that, if I did that, I'd probably be able to get some high character guys, because some of the parents would be like, hey, that's different, because a lot of people don't think like that. That's dinosaur thinking to them. Oh, you got to go with the facts and the future, and it's money, money, money. And no, it's not, because it's going to all come down to one thing at the, like when it's all said and done, when you shake everything out, it always comes down to one thing, and that is who you are, your character as a person. So that's how I would want to attack it.
I want to wrap up the football thing here with just talking about what's next for the future of the team. Quickly, the new coach has been hired. That is Jason Eck. He was over at the University of Idaho before this. Now, sounds like there is excitement around him as well. But what do you guys think is going to be the biggest challenge for Mr. Eck as he heads into his first season?
I mean, it's just going to be getting the team together. A lot of guys have left. He's lost Devin Dampier, Luke Weissong, 2 guys have brought up, I should say. And then it's going to be, fielding a team. I think he's definitely got the excitement. I mean, just talking to him, he's a football guy. Yeah. He's got that good football speak. He talks. He's a really good guy, and I mean, he excites me. So we'll see what happens. He just seems like a people person too, which is nice. But yes, he's definitely the first hurdle is fielding a team that's going to be competitive at this level. He's been at the FCS level, which he's got some great players at that level, hopefully coming up too with him. But that's going to be the big thing, is fielding a big team, I think.
And I think they softened the blow by making the hire as fast as they did, because now he can get in there and get working on the portal and bringing in guys. Because if they had waited, because we talked about this, me and Jared were talking about how, oh man, the second year for Bronco, if he had stayed here, that's going to be a good year, because he came in so late and he had to jump in the portal so late. And it was not only that, but the whole landscape has changed since he got here. So Coach Eck, them making that move like they did when they did, gave him a chance to hit the ground running, and we'll see what happens from that.
We'll be right back with more of the New Mexico News Insiders.
Hi, I'm Logan Rader, host of New Mexico Living. New Mexico News Insiders is sponsored by New Mexico PBS.
If you like New Mexico News Insiders, learn more about New Mexico in Focus, a weekly hour-long show analyzing decisions impacting New Mexico statewide. Stream it anytime, anywhere. Visit nmpbs.org and follow them on all social media platforms.
Now back to New Mexico News Insiders.
Let's switch gears here to the athletic department more broadly. We talked a little bit about AD Eddie Nunez leaving in August for a new role over at, I think, the University of Houston, if I'm correct, right? Mm-hmm. He spent 7 years with UNM. He came to the university in the middle of really a tumultuous time, months after he was hired, months after his predecessor, Paul Krebs, had resigned. Krebs was a longtime athletic director. The resignation came after News 13's Larry Barker had exposed a scandal with the university where essentially Krebs was overseeing university public funds. Those were used to pay potential boosters to go to Scotland for a golf trip. So it was public money being spent on private citizens, which is a big no-no. And we should know that the case did get prosecuted and Krebs was acquitted by a jury on all counts. Meanwhile, though, obviously Krebs walked away from the job. Nunez comes in. It's a new era for the department. He has to navigate almost immediately budget cuts. They cut some sports. The hiring and firing of coaches also happened in his tenure.
Yeah, and seemingly he was a well-liked athletic director, but what can you guys tell us about his tenure at UNM? What did he do and what did he mean for Lobo athletics?
Yeah, first off, I guess when you become an athletic director, you got to have their badge of honor of just something happening. Right?
Yeah, no doubt.
It's like you're getting your stripes. No, but I think Eddie Nunez, he definitely did come at a tumultuous time, like you guys said, and losing the men's soccer team right away, he had to get rid of. That was huge. That was a huge hit to the sports community, and I thought he navigated that very well, though. And I feel like he just did a good job of bringing in new coaches, getting the budget back in order. I have nothing but good things to say about Eddie Nunez. I mean, hiring Danny Gonzalez didn't end up being a great hire for football, but he was a guy that wanted to be here. I thought that was a good hire initially. And I think Richard Pitino has been huge. And those are all under his watch. I thought he did a lot of good things for this university.
I thought Eddie came in and what he did was key. He didn't let the outside noise affect anything he was doing. There were some tough choices that had to be made. Eddie made them. And, I don't know how much influence he gets from the other side of the campus, like the president's office or whatever.
The administration at large.
Yeah, but he did go forward with those things, and he made the coaching hires that he needed to make. He didn't allow anything else to take him off course, and he had his plan, and he just kept following it no matter what was going on. I thought that as far as him balancing the budget, getting the financial house in order, I thought that was huge because they were operating from such a bad situation, and you can't do anything with that. And so I think what he came in, and he was more than anything, he was a stabilizer. And him being young, and I think all the experience he had when he at LSU and the other places that he had been was instrumental in him handling the affairs here, because he, like you do things differently when you see it on a big level, like he had seen it. And so he could come here and use some tricks, like get other streams of revenue flowing to get them out of the hole. I think if I was going to describe his tenure, I'd say stabilizer.
Yeah.
And I got to say, too, he was under a microscope, too, the whole time after the whole Krebs stuff, so that was huge. And he also got Shaq to a pit, to the pit at a Lobo game. That was pretty cool. People were hyped about that.
That was big news.
Yeah, Shaq came to Albuquerque, which is, and then he did a few shows.
Shaq had been here
well.
before, though.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
The new athletic director is a guy named Fernando Lovo. As we talked about, he's pretty young on the scene. Like Eddie Nunez, this is his first role as a full-blown athletic director, being the big dog of the department. Who is he? Where is he from? And what do you expect out of him?
I expect him to do a lot of good things just because he's coming in with a young perspective. He's got fresh ideas. He's been, he's even had some experience in the NFL, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and his mentor was a guy from Taos that who did a lot of good things for Baylor. Who got Baylor, rolling pretty good, and Mr. Conti. I expect him to just continue what Eddie has done, but him being young, he needs to make sure he doesn't step into any landmines and stuff like that, because sometimes there'll be people, and I'm not saying that there are people like that, but there might be somebody who doesn't have his best interest in heart. He's got to make sure that he navigates this thing the proper way, and he's in his past experiences, like what he's done at this young age, a lot of people don't do in maybe a whole bunch of years. So he's coming in hot. He is really young, and he seems to be. Jared, he was there with. We were there together when he was introduced. He seems to be a guy who would listen to ideas and try to bounce them off and get opinions from multiple people so he can make a wise decision. That's just how he came off to me. What about you?
No, for sure. Yeah, he definitely seems like that. I mean, it's also so early on right now, so he's going to say what he needs to say, and he's saying everything that he needs to say. So I'm just interested to see what comes now after this, with everything like with the lawsuits and everything like that, see what happens, what he comes out of this. But, I mean, right now we're just getting a glimpse of him, and I like what I see, but I think we'll really get to know Fern Lovo, as he likes to go by. The weeks to come or the years probably, yeah.
All right. Well, already, along with hiring a new football coach, Lovo is navigating, as we called it, one of the most unique and likely challenging situations in Division I college athletics right now. Specifically, let's talk about the conflict on the men's basketball team between a redshirt freshman, Shane Dumas-Sanchez, the coaching staff, and an unnamed player. Now, Dumas-Sanchez, he's a 20-year-old Laguna Pueblo native. He has now filed a lawsuit against Coach Richard Pitino and the university at large. I spoke to him and his attorneys before the lawsuit was filed. He claims he was attacked by a teammate who we're not naming because he hasn't been criminally charged or suspended. The attorneys for Dumas-Sanchez also chose not to name the alleged aggressor in their lawsuit, and we can talk more about that in a bit. But the gist of what Dumas-Sanchez claims is this. He says that while the team was on a trip to Palm Springs for a basketball tournament in November, he alleges a dispute over an airplane seat escalated to blows, claiming when the team landed in California, a player sucker punched him in the face, fracturing his nose, then hit him in his already injured shoulder.
I mean, every team has issues, but it's never gotten to the point where we wanted to hit each other and hurt each other. It's never gotten to that point, no.
So as we understand, the accused aggressor was able to play in the tournament while Duma Sanchez, the redshirt freshman, he said he flew home and spent part of Thanksgiving at the hospital getting treated for his injuries during that alleged attack.
So the lawsuit was officially filed in early January, and it in part alleges that Duma Sanchez was subject to prior name-calling and harassment, and claims, quote, that made him feel unwelcome, that behavior made him feel unwelcome and unsafe on the team. He also claims in the lawsuit that, quote, UNM turned a blind eye to a pattern of misconduct. So we should also note in our reporting, our team did speak to the attorney for the alleged aggressor in this situation. He declined an interview, and when the lawsuit was filed, he wrote us an email saying, quote, there is nothing to say.
So at the basis of this lawsuit, attorneys for Duma Sanchez told me this.
College athletics should be about the betterment of the student athletes. And here we have a situation where the coaches and the administration have clearly prioritized winning and the financial benefits to the school of their athletic program over the safety of their student athletes.
So that was Charles Parnell, one of the attorneys representing Duma Sanchez. So Van and Jared, to bring you into this conversation, how unusual is this from your perspective? How often do you see teams facing internal conflict?
Very unusual. Just for
the way that this
fact,
is rolled out.
The way it happened, and before I say anything, let me just say I am not taking sides on any side at all. But as Jared would tell you, the same thing. Every team I've been on, we've had fights and stuff, and I don't remember anybody litigating it. But I don't know how severe this was. I wasn't there. I don't want to speak on that because I don't know, all of that happened. But that's what makes it unusual. Usually, when you have a team, you settle things inside. But the athlete is different these days. Everything is different. And you could take other situations. There's been other schools that's had problems, but they were more serious things other than a fight. So it's just going to be a unique situation. I don't know what's going to come out of it. I've never seen anything like it. I haven't.
Yeah, no, there are definitely fights within the teams and stuff like that, and on any team. That's just the way athletics are. I mean, it's high pressure, like a lot of stuff going on, a lot of different, a lot of different personalities. But I think, yes, to see where this has gone, it's definitely unusual from our perspective, and I am very interested to see how this plays out. I feel bad for what has happened. Obviously, it's a major distraction, not only for the team but also the fan base. I mean, we have a lot of people talking to us about it, disappointed about what's going on, and it's just, it's one of those things that it happens, but hopefully it could be navigated to the correct conclusion. That's my PC way of saying it, I think.
Yeah,
so.
I think it is interesting too, because I mean, both of you bring up that each teams have their conflicts, and or every team out there usually has an internal conflict. And even Shane, in his interview with Gabby, he admitted that too, that every team's got their issues, I think was part of what he said. So, but this certainly is a different way of addressing it, and they certainly have their reasons for why they chose to do that.
Yeah, and I did ask him about that, and he claims, part of the reason why they chose to file the lawsuit was because they do feel like this was not handled well, at least from the coach's perspective. That had it been handled internally on the proper channels, their argument is that there might, not have been a lawsuit. Right. So we'll see how that.
As far as fights. Man, when we had this conversation, me and Jerry were talking about this, I was just thinking about, man, how many fights did I have, like, even in college, like in football? And I was just like, man, I've lost count. I don't, I mean, it's just, it's crazy. It happens out there. And, but with that said, like I said, I'm not condoning anything. It's just extremely unusual. And cause then it's going to be just because of how teams work in locker rooms. I don't know if he's going to get a chance to play somewhere else. I mean, just because of I don't know if people will see him, and you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, they're when news gets reported, people react, and things happen sometimes. So it's a good question. Going to the games and reporting on them, can you guys tell by any stretch if this situation has yet had an impact on the team? I think we all suspect it, but can you tell for sure whether or not this feels like this has had an impact, whether it's a distraction or has it motivated them or something else?
Yeah, I will say I asked Coach Bettino the question about has it had an effect on his team, and he came back saying I cannot comment. So that's all I have factually from them. But I mean, going to watch, of course it's going to be a distraction. I mean, if you don't think it's going to be, then you're wrong. It's going to be a distraction. But have they handled it well? Yes, they have. And I don't think they've let this get them down. But, I mean, it is definitely something that's got to be weighing on them or in the back of their minds at least a little bit. Yeah,
because, I mean, I've never seen anything like it. And that's not to take any sides at all. I'm really it's just a surprising situation. It's unfortunate. I hate that it happened to him. I hate that he had to endure any kind of whatever he says that happened to him. I hate any of this. I just wish they could have worked it out, whatever it was going on, and it didn't have to get to this, because and like he acknowledged that those things happen all the time, and that the way it was handled is the main reason why he's bringing that suit. I just wish it didn't. Like everybody's going to be affected by it on both sides, and it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, it's always disappointing, I think, when you hear about allegations of, criminal action or things that are distracting from the actual college athletics program. Right. But as we understand, everyone involved in this incident is still with the team. I don't think Shane is playing, though. No. You guys haven't seen him playing. Yeah.
Because he's redshirting, right?
Right,
so he
sure.
Just naturally sit out for the year in that
but nobody has been benched, pending any sort of investigation or anything either. So, and the university hasn't said much of the allegations except that it is investigating and that privacy rules prevent them from getting into more details. The attorney for the player accused of being the aggressor also told us previously that they're doing their own investigation. But regardless, do you anticipate this team, this men's basketball team, to look the same next season, or whether it's players or coaches? How do you foresee it?
Oh, man, that is really too hard to tell because it's transfer portal.
Yeah, like we talked earlier. It's changed and moving pieces.
Yeah. I mean, it could be a completely new team out here.
Yeah, definitely. Coach talks about that all the time. It's tough to have kids stay, but I do think a good core of this team will stay. I don't know if you feel that way too.
Yeah, I feel like some of the main guys who've become a fixture as far as contributing on the floor. I think some of those guys will be here, and because they don't really seem to have a hard time with guys leaving who are actually making a contribution, because a lot of those guys did stay, even from last year. So
this situation aside, you guys are saying in normal times right now, it's too early to tell.
Man, the transfer portal changed everything. I mean, and it's good and bad. Like if you had a struggling program, if you got a guy who can work the portal like a hustler, man, you could be in a championship conversation the next year.
And my understanding too is the portal is basically it's this place where any athlete at the end of essentially their season or whenever they want to declare.
It's all 1 year deals anyway.
Yeah, I'll go to whoever. Yeah. So it's basically you can demand a trade if you're looking at it on a different kind of level. Demand a trade any season you want.
And some teams are getting general managers and stuff like that because of it.
Yeah. So it's
wow.
It's different. Yeah.
Wild times.
We'll be right back with more on New Mexico News Insiders.
Hi, I'm Monica Wicki, host of New Mexico Living. This episode of New Mexico News Insiders is sponsored by New Mexico PBS. If you enjoy New Mexico News Insiders, check out New Mexico in Focus, a great source for insights about what's happening in our state. Catch their podcast and videos at nmpbs.org or stream it anytime, anywhere on the free PBS app. Now, let's continue to New Mexico News Insiders.
Will, is there anything else that we didn't ask you guys directly about that you would add about as we cover covered just kind of a lot of ups and downs with Lobo Athletics and their two really most watched programs over the last 4 months here.
I think you guys are pretty thorough.
Well, thank you.
You guys are good at your jobs.
You too.
rocked it.
You too.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, I guess, we'll just sort of see, I think within the next probably, I would guess, 6 months, how all of this really shakes out. By then, the basketball season's going to be over. The football season will start ramping up for spring training camp. And then as well,
all bets are off, brother.
We'll have at least maybe some court dates to talk about, depending on how this lawsuit moves.
Well, I
forward.
hope that thing, talking about the lawsuit, I hope it works out for everybody, because it's an unusual situation. And I feel bad for Duma Sanchez, because we know the kid. He comes here, he's done sports office with us and all kind of things. And without knowing the other side of that, I don't want to say too much, but it's just so unusual, because fighting it's almost like when you get on the team, you're gonna have some fights.
You're bound to disagree with somebody.
You're gonna disagree with somebody,
right?
It's a guarantee, man.
Well, and you always like to be able to see college athletes do what they love to do, which in this case is play basketball. So anything that distracts from that is always, just disappointing. But Van, Tate, and Jared Chester, thank you so much for joining us. We always appreciate your perspective and analysis.
Man,
Thank
that's
you.
2 times now, Jared. What's up, man?
Gosh,
You're going to have to
awesome.
cut us in on some of this pay, man.
Every week? Can we get in here and just something? Gosh, this is fun.
Well, thank you guys for being here. Appreciate you.
Well, thanks again to Van and Jared for that extended analysis, just a conversation about what's going on at UNM Athletics. We should also note that there is also fallout in the athletics world for the Lobo rivals, that being New Mexico State Aggies, who just fired their athletic director, Mario Mocha, after a scathing report about a hazing scandal that the men's basketball team was embroiled in. We did a whole episode about that scandal in the summer of 2023, if you'd like to go back and hear much more about that situation.
Yeah, there's certainly more I think we can get into about that, but that certainly I think will take another episode from us. So we didn't really want to just shoehorn it in, but it is worth a mention, I know, because there's probably plenty of people listening saying, what about the Aggies?
What about, that always happens anytime you report about one team.
Yeah,
the other team is like, hey, what about them?
Yeah, so this latest chapter for the Aggies, it's about a year and a half after firing the basketball coach as well, who oversaw the team when that whole scandal really unfolded. That's athletic director Mario Mocha, now being fired for cause in early January. So also worth noting, he won't receive any sort of buyout for ending his contract early. He was, again, fired for cause.
Yeah, so we will continue to pay attention to all of the college sports here in New Mexico. We appreciate our listeners. Thanks again to our Spotify listener for the topic idea.
Yeah,
feel free to send us your ideas. I'm at gabrielle.burkhart@krqe.com via email, and gburknm on social media.
And I'm at Chris McKee TV, also chris.mckee@krqe.com. Don't forget, you can catch the full conversation at krqe.com/podcasts, also youtube.com/krqe. Thanks for listening.